is to my last question about Israel and Hamas and your book, Courage and Culture. Now, one thesis, according to Wikipedia, your thesis is that the military dominance of Western civilization, beginning with the ancient Greeks, results from certain fundamental aspects of Western culture, such as consensual government, tradition of self-critic, secular rationalism, religious tolerance, individual freedom, free expression, free markets, and individualism. But there is also one major thing, that the West, when fight one with another, tries to courage, to smash his opponent, his rival. And this very day, we have ceasefire between Israel and Hamas says, we won. And we said, we won because we won in points. So your theory about how the West became so dominant, how the West won, how the military of the West became so invincible, is not suit for Israel and Hamas, is not suit for guerrilla, and it might not suit for the US and Afghanistan. So what's your take on courage and culture, and what just happened with our fight with Hamas?
In the 1940s, we developed nuclear weapons. And so the logical extension of a war was no longer possible. So you could not, if you were in South Korea and you defeated North Korea, and we did, but you wanted to retake the country, there was the suggestion you might have to use nuclear weapons. So that was considered taboo. And so you and I know that if Israel did not have restraints on it by the United Nations or public opinion in Europe, but most importantly by a military supplier of the United States, you could defeat Hamas, and you could defeat them in a way that they would not do what they did. So that's one thing. There are restraints on the natural conclusion of Western war because of an idea that war is in our past. It's a Neanderthal idea that no longer belongs in the 21st century. Unfortunately, human nature doesn't change. So that's one thing to remember. The second is, I kind of disagree with your exegesis that Israel says it won and Hamas says it won, so nobody won, or who knows what. Everybody knows if you take this 11 or 12-day war, who won? You can adjudicate that question any way you want. How many casualties on one side, how much damage on the other side.
Victor, I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't want to interrupt. By people in Sderot, people in Ashkelon, my parents-in-law said, we feel bad that the war was ended this way. We wanted to keep going until Hamas is done.
Yes,
so
I agree with
Israel.
you.
Okay, so many people in Israel.
No, I know that. The same thing is true in Afghanistan. The same thing was true in Iraq. The same thing is true anytime a Western power that has military dominance goes in and fights a less comparable non-Western country, then that country is very adept at appealing to Western public opinion and saying, you're too powerful, you're too disproportionate, you shouldn't do this. And this is, just watch the news in this country. We have people in the West who say Israel should have had the Iron Dome for Hamas, or why it's crazy. You know, you can knock down 3,000 missiles and then people will say, well, why don't they just knock down 2,000 to make it even? That's moral equivalency. That's a Western pathology. But what I'm getting at is, you guys determined this phrase, or you used it, mow the lawn. And what you mean by that is that you're aware of this Western pathology. And that what you have done in the past is an American president under public pressure from Europe or the UN or your enemies, Russia or China, says, tell them to stop. It's humiliating for us that our client is being humiliated. And we say, hey, you guys, at least until this administration, and maybe not the Biden, but other than Obama and Biden, we said, hey, I can give you another 48 hours. And then you guys called back and said, hey, I need 24 more. And you said, no. And you said, okay. And that little game went on while you ended that threat for a while. But you were not allowed under the rules of combat, as we're not allowed. You complain that you're not allowed to get rid of Hamas. We complain we weren't able to go in there and just bomb the crap out of Al-Qaeda and the Ba'athists in Iraq because of Abu Ghraib. So that's we both share the same phenomenon. We're aware of it. But that being said, even though this is an asymmetrical war, and even though they put their rockets in the middle of nurseries. And even though the media hates Israel and idolizes people who are not democratic and fascistic, you have discovered, because of your Western traditions, you've discovered how to beat them at their game, not defeat them. But in this 11-day period, I will make a prediction to you. 30 days from now, when all the media is gone, people are going to be walking around Israel. They're going to be angry that Jews were attacked in the streets. They're going to be angry that Jews were killed and rockets came. But then suddenly people are going to say, my God, how in the hell did we knock down 95% of these rockets? And how did we do this? And then people in Gaza are going to be looking at this and they're going to say, Mr. Hamas 1, he's dead. Where's Mr. Hamas 4? He disappeared. What happened to him? Oh, I had a cousin. What happened to him? He's buried in that tunnel. Well, how many rockets do we have? And they're going to start tabulating the damage. And people are going to say, they're going to do it again if we do this. And we can't continue this. This is not sustainable. So we're going to do all this rhetoric, how we beat them, but we want them to stop. And that's going to last for 2 to 4 years. And then they're going to have amnesia and they're going to say, let's try it again. And then you're going to do it again. And that's going to go on and on and on until finally someone is going to decide on their side, we're going to go all out and they're going to be destroyed. Or somebody on your side says, I don't want to mow the lawn. I want to just get rid of it. And so, but for now, and this can go on a long time. There was the first to third Punic War went on for over a century. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. So this is very common in history. And the Middle East has been at war since 1947. But I would argue that if you look at 1947 and what you were up against then and you are now, you won. In other words, the reason that the world is angry at Israel, there's a variety of reasons, anti-Semitism, of course. But one of the reasons is we don't condescend in the West and say, poor little Israel, it's weak, it's got the kibbutz, they've got all these people. So we kind of sympathize with the children of the Holocaust, they're being attacked. No, now it is, oh my God, they've got a brilliant economy. Man, they're exporting natural gas. They got the most sophisticated, these guys are really good. They're the overdog. My gosh, I can't sympathize with them anymore. They're too powerful, so I'm going to sympathize with the weak people and forget morality, and that's where we are. But these are Western pathologies that your leaders and your intellectuals and your people in the Israeli street, they know all about it. They know all this. And you have a lot of supporters in the United States. And I'll just finish with this strange thing that's happened in the United States, that the left that used to support Israel has now been taken over by the woke movement. And in their way, you guys are the Minneapolis Police Department and Hamas is George Floyd, and everything else doesn't matter. You can see Geraldo Rivera the other night on Fox News, just screaming and yelling about that. But for most Americans, and especially the Republican Party, and I grew up when anti-Semitism was a weird right-wing phenomenon, people in Idaho or something, that doesn't exist anymore. The majority of Americans and the totality of the conservative Republican movement is pro-Israeli. And all of us know that. And we defend Israel all the time that we can, intellectually, morally, ethically, politically, culturally, socially. And I can tell you that when I write something, I wrote 2 articles on Israel this week, I would say 10 to 1, the mail I got was favorable, but with one distinction. The mail that was favorable was reasoned. You should have mentioned this. I like this, but, and the mail that was not reasonable was capital letters, F-U, that, and that's all I needed to know.
Emotion versus reason.